Morning, Art. Good morning, everyone. Let me see here. I'm in the process of getting organized for the morning. Just a moment. Okay, here we go. Good morning, Liberat. Oh, great. Michelle is here. Hi, nice to see you this morning. Wow, that's quite
Yes,
a shirt you've got on. Can you show
thank
me?
you.
What is it?
Uh,
What is it?
it's one of these metal bands.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they always have cool shirts at the shows
Uh-huh.
because it's actually you make more money selling merchandise than you would think than actually playing gigs.
Yeah, that I sort of believe because, playing gigs, uh, you're only selling a few records, maybe.
Hmm.
And tell me about the painting behind you. I like that.
Um, it's Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night, but it's in psychedelic colors.
Who painted that?
Vincent van Gogh?
No, no, but who put in the psychedelic colors?
Um, I'm not sure.
Huh.
I saw it and I bought it.
Good for you. Uh, it's I mean, I see that uh, it's Van Gogh-ish. I wasn't really sure that it was Van Gogh, but uh, that's great. Um, I was supposed to send somebody Roberta Harvey's email address. Was that you, Michelle?
No, I don't think it was me.
It wasn't you. Okay. Um, all right. Well, that one got away with from me, I'm sorry to say. So, Roberta, my apologies if you hear this. I did not get that email address off to that person, whoever it was. I've just been betwixt and between the whole summer. And I woke up this morning to find out I have 3 days of training that I have to go to in the next 2 weeks somehow, which I don't know if I'll do it or not. Uh, it's because
Didn't you just have to take testing?
yes, I did have to take testing. It's never ending now. I mean, school is never over. Uh, and they've really shortened summer vacations. And so anyway, such is life.
That
So
is true.
I'm down to 2 weeks left off. Uh, it's actually 9 business days off left, of which 3 are supposed to be in this training. And I said, good grief. All right. If I gotta, I gotta. But
Yeah.
people think school teachers have an easy job, but they do not. I
No, it's the lesson planning. Um, I don't know anything about being a teacher, but I hear that the lesson planning is really hard.
hmm, that's hard enough, but uh, I don't know. In my school, the interactions with the kids are difficult. I can say that. Uh, okay, so we have been looking at this essay last week uh, by Grazina Gudite. I believe she's from
Is it this book?
uh I don't know, it might be.
It's
Who's that by?
it's Reading the Red Book, an interpretive guide by Sanford L. Draub.
I don't know that one.
Oh, I thought we were reading from this book for some reason.
No, I'm reading from uh so this is an essay by Grazina Gudite, and she's from Lithuania, from Vilnius. And I handled half of it last week. Good morning, Richard, and good morning, Kathy. And so I'm going to do the rest this week. This seems like an interesting part of this essay. It's about an analytical case. So maybe we can learn something from it, I hope. Okay, so
All
I'm
right.
reading from this book, Jung's Red Book for Our Time, Searching for Soul Under Postmodern Conditions, edited by Murray Stein and Thomas Arst. Wait a minute. There you
Is that
go.
volume one?
This is volume two.
Oh, I have volume one on Kindle.
Yeah, this is volume two, and there are 5 volumes. So if you're going to read this one, you have to get volume two.
See, it's
But
never ending.
yeah. Um, and I do have some new books coming, including the late essays or the late um, teachings by Jung himself. And they should be here within this week. I'm going to work with those in the advanced reading group, which we do on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So if anyone would be interested in that, please join us there. I have some other books coming. I don't remember what, and so we'll see. I still have 3.5 of these books of essays to work with.
All right.
Uh,
I'm gonna go on invisible mode, but
oh,
before that, I want to show you this book that I just got.
The Clash of Civilizations.
Yes. Do you know this
Okay.
book?
Uh, well, there are many books like it. What's his, what's,
Samuel P. Huntington.
yeah,
Um, The Clash of Civilizations and the Remaking of World Order.
yeah, okay. Well, that's been going on for, we didn't start the fire as
Yeah,
what's
that's
his name
true.
said. Who's the piano man? I forget his name.
I don't know.
Oh, anyway, one of his songs is "We Didn't Start the Fire." And so civilizations have been clashing. The book that I've been promoting the last few weeks is called The Golden Road by William Dalrymple. And I highly recommend this book. It is awesome what it teaches us about what was going on in the ancient world. And it makes us seem like new guys. And I went,
It's on my reading list. I think I looked at it and it's not available on Kindle. You have to like buy a physical copy.
yeah, maybe. I don't know because Debbie bought me mine. She had it, and I started to read hers, and I said, "You could give me this for my birthday," and so she gave it to me for Father's Day instead. Um, Billy Joel, yeah, Richard Casper gave us the name. Billy Joel had a song called "We Didn't Start the Fire," and so the Clash of Civilizations has been going on, and
Oh,
just to give you an example of what newbies we are, Charlemagne declared the Holy Roman Empire um, in Austria in the year 800. And in 802, uh, on the other side of the world, they were building Borobudur, which is um, the largest Buddhist temple in the world, and it's in Indonesia. It's not in India, it's not in China, it's not in Japan or Korea. It is in Indonesia. And
Is
it
that
is,
Cambodia? I'm sorry, is that
no,
Cambodia?
well, no, the one that's in Cambodia is the largest religious place in the world, and that's Angkor Wat. And, I've barely ever heard of Angkor Wat. Angkor Wat was built about the same time. Amazingly, all these things were happening at the same time. And Angkor Wat is 4 times the size of the Vatican, and it's the largest Hindu temple in the world. And I've the book has pictures of it from high above it, so you can get a gist of it. But the moat around Angkor Wat encompasses 500 acres, I guess, and it took 10 years to build by, I don't know, 10,000 workers or something like that. And so I just think reading The Golden Road is a great perspective piece, uh, because for among other things, it talks about the shipwreck that was discovered in 1997, so not that long ago, 28 years ago, and it was discovered out off the coast of Java, I think, and it there were just over the open sea, there were seabirds that were circling around. And it wasn't clear why they were circling around, but they were. And maybe this shipwreck was still letting off some gas or something, which made bubbles or something. So the birds thought that fish were coming. Anyway, whatever it was, um, the divers went down 250 feet and found the shipwreck that happened in the year 1000. And in this shipwreck were all kinds of Buddhist and Hindu treasures, all kinds of stuff that they found. And this is only 28 years ago. And it was at the bottom of the sea for 1,000 years, hidden from us. But now we have it.
That's amazing.
And yeah, and it's amazing that it was found. We found it because of seabirds. Um, Deborah says, I've been watching a guy's channel who is a geophysicist and planetary weather guy. He has been predicting the earthquakes and is integrating the science with uh, mediation. I think you mean meditation. I hope that's what you mean. Spirituality and astrology. And so what has become just crystal clear to me is that all religions have been talking about the unconscious, and all of them, um, their wonderful moments of numinous experience are numinous experiences like have been experienced throughout the world, and the purpose of ritual is to do the same thing that Jung's psychology does, which is to to make available access to the healing power of the unconscious. Okay, so we are healed by our own unconscious. And, for thousands of years, we've been calling it God, and in a way it is, and we're all part of one thing uh, in terms of the collective unconscious. So um, anyway, I guess that's enough of that. But let's talk about this case. So I'm on page 180 of this book, volume 2, Paradoxes in the Search for Meaning in an Analytical Case. I would like to share the analysis of a dream that came up in the course of a treatment. This is a dream of a client who was in her 40s at the time, in her 40s at the time. She was active and successful, and she enjoyed a full enough outer and inner life. At the time her father passed away, she found that it was hard to face the fact that there was no way to heal him. Facing the reality of death and helplessness evoked many feelings, and questions about meaning were prominent among other existential questions. The dream emerged a year after her father passed away. And here's the dream, quote, I was in a church of my childhood town. My father was in the church too. He was very young and was with his mother. It was the moment of Alleluia in the Mass. I felt the moment of majesty very strongly. I was able to arise and fly, real majesty. My body became bigger, but then I felt a very strong pain in my leg. I woke up for a moment, and then dreaming again, I heard music. This time it was violin music. I saw a lay musician who was sitting on the ground near the church. That was him who was playing that wonderful violin music. At that moment, I discovered the meaning of the phrase, witness the reality of God, unquote. Okay, so here, the first reaction after she told the dream was her feeling of surprise. She saw her father young. She had never seen him so young, neither in reality nor in pictures. The other surprising motif was seeing her grandmother. She had never met her. Since this grandmother had died in exile in Siberia several years before she was born, since the dream emerged just a year after her father passed away, we could accept it as a part of the mourning process. But the manifest content of the dream opens up several moments of phenomenology in the experience of a relationship with the transcendent. The initial scene of the dream is in a church, a sacred space organized to show the importance of the center and the vertical axis of life. The three cosmic levels, heaven, earth, and underworld, are expected to be in communication in sacred space. The dream of that client is a good illustration for that supposition, since important figures from the world of dead participate in the initial scene of the dream. The protagonist of the dream represents life on the earth, whereas the loud Alleluia and the testimony of God are signs of opening of the vertical axis, not only the space, i.e. the church, but also the ritual taking place at the time of Mass, indicates the experience of transcendence. Just as a church constitutes a break-in plane in the profane space of a modern city, the service celebrated inside it the service celebrated inside it marks a break in profane temporal duration. It is no longer today's historical time that is experienced. For example, in the adjacent streets, dash, but the time in which the historical existence of Jesus Christ occurred, the time sanctified by the preaching of his by his preaching, by his passion, death, and resurrection. The ideas of rebirth and sacrifice as a condition for renewal are basic items of human faith and belief. They are sources of hope and continuity in difficult situations of loss and bereavement. A relationship with transcendence may be an important resource for enabling a person to accept such events in life. On the other hand, it is very challenging to encounter the power of the transcendent, and contact with the center is crucial at such times. Contact with the center does not mean simply finding a stable place. As Edward Edinger states, the experience of the center involves a dialectic process between two positions. Quote, it requires a two-ness to take place. If the ego usurps the center, it loses its object. Unquote. Identification with the higher force is an important moment, but it cannot last long. Disidentification and coming back to one's own body are necessary conditions for the dialogue. The dream illustrates both moments: identification with some higher force and an experience of majesty take place. This could bring the ego to a state of inflation and loss of connection with her body and perhaps also with the other. If one stays in such a position, the experience of inner emptiness can be the consequence, as well as facing the emptiness of the center. The experience of transcending ego boundaries is usually regarded clinically as a controversial phenomenon. As mentioned above, it may be a symptom of ego inflation, and in some situations, it could be understood as an expression of psychic disorder. Even Jung used some clinical terms to reflect upon his most difficult experiment. It is not easy to differentiate between psychopathology and exceptional experiences of transcendence, but this ambiguity must be accepted if one wishes to understand the deepest and the highest levels of integration. The individual needs to be open to such exceptional experiences of the numinous, which may be colored by both bliss and awe. The demonic divine object may appear to the mind an object of horror and dread, but at the same time, it is no less something that allures with a potent charm, and the creature who trembles before it, utterly cowed and cast down, has always at the same time the impulse to turn it, nay, even make it somehow his own. The mystery is for him not merely something to be wondered at, but something that entrances him. Rudolf Otto states that such an experience may be accepted as a blessing. It may be the source for inspiration and creativity, and it always changes the consciousness of an individual. But on the other hand, such an experience may lead to a state of intoxication, inflation, and loss of self. Perhaps this is the biggest paradox of the experience of the vertical dimension. It is important to look for the horizontal perspective as well. Okay, so let me just see what you all are saying. Deborah says, during the week, I find myself looking forward to the live stream. Thank you, Deborah. Great. I'm delighted to hear it. Let's see. And Deborah says, I've been watching a guy's channel who is a geophysicist and planetary weather guy. He has been practicing predicting earthquakes and is integrating the science with meditation, spirituality, and astrology. Interesting. Meditation, yes. And Richard says, great observation, Skip, about the psychological aspects of religion. Cherie, lift your eyes, the religious writings of Leo Tolstoy. Deborah says, the Hindu gods and goddesses can involve contradictions, like Kali is a ferocious looking goddess surrounded by uh, boots, disembodied souls. And Richard, does anyone ever pray the rosary? I've had nothing but peace since I started. Mary, who was impregnated by the Holy Ghost, was the first to experience the mysteries. And so, not being Catholic, I do not pray the rosary. However, I have malas from my Tibetan practice, and I sometimes use them. In fact, I have one on my wrist at the moment, which is this. Um, and I don't use it to count my prayers, but it does have, I don't know if it'll be right side up here. Let me put it this way. It does have one bead that says on it, Om. I don't know if that can be in good enough focus for you to see, but this is a mala of dragon's teeth, and it's got 30 beads on it. I don't know why, but uh, anyway, I wear it because I asked for uh, a wrist mala from my wife for my birthday, and I got it. So this is dragon's teeth, and I have another one representing prosperity, um, which is a Tibetan mala. That's this one. And I think I will get another one for this year's birthday. I've asked for one for each year I'm teaching. Um, so Deborah says also Shiva is the destroyer and he does the dance of destruction, but he is in a state of bliss. Uh, and Yeah, so the Hindus already represent or recognize that there's a duality going on. Yeah, low writer North Carolina says vertical meaning heavens, horizontal meaning current spaces. And Deborah, the Lord's Prayer is a mantra and it silences the noise in our head and focuses on forgiveness. This frees us to go into thoughtless awareness. Um, yeah, Edinger did a wonderful um, essay, I think, and also maybe a video that can be found of talking about the seven aspirations um, that are contained in the Lord's Prayer, and I recommend you find that. So James Hillman, the silver and the white earth, the lunatic, the lover, and the poet conference in 79 in Niagara Falls. I wish I could have been there. Jesus's last command from the cross was to take Mary into our homes. Um, I don't remember that particular aspect, but maybe Richard can give us a cite to the Bible. Okay, take a drink and I'll go on.
I'm back.
Hi, did you have
Um,
something?
yes, as a Catholic, I wanted to show my prayer guide, and it's from Saint Anthony, and like there's instructions on how to pray the rosary.
Uh-huh.
And the thing that what I read, why Jung always encouraged Catholics to go back to church
Mm.
was because there were so many symbols going back to like medieval times, and there were so many different ceremonies and candles and incense and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
But this
and
is my companion book.
So
And
how do we get a copy of that if we want one?
um
It's called the Catholic Prayer or
yeah,
something.
it's at www.companionsofsaintanthony.org.
Hmm. Okay. Companions of Saint Anthony.org.
Yeah, he is Saint Anthony of Padua. Saint Anthony of Padua was born in Lisbon, Portugal in 1195. He joined the Augustine order when he was 15. In 1220, he witnessed the courage of five Franciscan friars who were on their way to Morocco where they were martyred. He was so impressed by their love of the Lord that he became a follower of Saint Francis of Assisi.
He did what?
He was so impressed by their love of the Lord that he became a follower of Saint Francis of Assisi.
Okay. So he became a Franciscan.
Yes.
Okay. So my uncle became a Franciscan. He and his brother were dropped off at ages 11 and 13 by their mother with the Franciscans in New York City, and they both went into the order. And um, my uncle, he didn't become a priest; he became a monk, a Franciscan monk. Okay. And so he became an educator and went on to be the vice president of St. Francis College in New York City. But then when he was 45, he met my aunt, who was Auntie Mame, like Auntie Mame. She was an early feminist who had been a member of the 1940 Olympic team in synchronized swimming. Unfortunately, the Olympics didn't occur that year, but she was anyway selected for the team. And she was dean of women at Penn State University when there were such things as deans of women. And I don't think there are anymore. And anyway, my uncle had taken a Fulbright fellowship, which caused him to disavow his vows. He had to get out of his vows in order to take the Fulbright. He went to India on his Fulbright, immediately got sick, and got medevaced to Kenya, where he was uh, being treated for dysentery, I guess. And during that time, he got to thinking about my aunt, who he had met at some conference. They were both 45-year-old psychologists, but neither had been married. And they married and lived happily for the next 30 years, I guess, because my aunt died at 75 in a car accident. So, anyway, um,
That's amazing. Yeah, Jung said that in times of like distress or when we go into the desert, um, like our self pulls us with our imaginations and our desires.
mhm,
So maybe that happened to him.
yeah,
So
yep. So, anyway, I mean, I had an interesting experience between me and Tim Holmes, where um, I had I had got this book, this pamphlet, which I'm thinking about reading, the Healing Shadow, and it's a sermon by this fellow Raymond Browning, who lived in the early 20th century. And it's not about the shadow as Jung knew it. Uh, it's about the shadow of Saint um, Simon Peter, I guess, who had been the one apostle who walked on water. among other things. And
Oh,
and
that
so,
reminds me about a monk. I went through like a seminar, Catholics, I was gonna say Catholic school, but the Catholic Church has, you can sign up for all kinds of things.
mhm,
And I was going through like a seminar. It was like healing, and he went into some sort of order where he took the vows of silence. And
that's the Trappists, I think.
yeah, and then he had a story about how he became an alcoholic, which
Mm,
uh wasn't good for him, but he um he still had a lot of knowledge, and he told me about the vertical and horizontal access to where are my feet? Like when I lose ground or like get caught up in like internet memes and conspiracy
mhm.
theories. It's
Yeah,
like,
all that
okay,
stuff.
where are my feet?
Yeah. Well, that's important. That's an important question. Where are your feet? Are you well grounded? And in any case, this story, which I had sent to Tim yesterday, um, Tim responded that he wasn't used to reading evangelical sermons. Tim's a Methodist, and he's more used to people talking about relationships between people. And I don't know anything about Methodism. Maybe I should sometime because I keep hearing things about Methodism that I like. Uh, and so anyway, my response to Tim was, huh, I never thought of the two as separated because for me, I think of all the numinous experiences as one. Okay, in other words, you can get to the numinous experience and therefore an experience of God through any of the world's religions. And what is, truly phenomenal and incredible is how in the ancient world, uh, not only the Egyptian pyramids, but um, Angkor Wat has more stone in it than the pyramids of Egypt when it was built. Now, of course, those pyramids were 5,000 years earlier, um, but Angkor Wat was built with more stone than the pyramids, and Borobudur, which is the largest Buddhist temple, or stupa, I guess it is technically, is not in any of the places you'd look because Indone Indonesia is the world's largest Muslim country, believe it or not. I mean, the today Indonesia has 200 million Muslims, and that's more than the 120 or so million Muslims in India, which is the second largest Muslim country. Uh,
Yeah, I think Indonesia and like Africa are supposed to be like booming economies in the future.
I believe it, sure. And Indonesia is currently in the process of moving their capital away from Jakarta, which apparently is sinking into the sea. Um, and Cherie says, I'm looking at Mary right now. She hangs in my living room, an older wooden painting of Guadalupe. Uh, and Cherie is Guadalupe and Mary synonymous? That I don't know. Um, And Deborah says Mary is the feminine principle for sure. Anyway, okay. Okay. All right. So the next part of the dream gives some hints about the experience of the horizontal dimension. The dreamer is in a street full of dust and people, and the lame musician is sitting on the ground near the church playing music. No majesty, just dust. No flow, just being lamed and sitting on the ground. It is the horizontal dimension of life. The violin originally was created for street musicians. So here we see the protagonist moving from sacred space to profane. Uh, A said that she accepted the ending of the dream with a big relief. She said that she liked violin music more than organ music, and that street musicians seemed to be they played when they wanted and what they wanted. She was on the ground now, and everything was in order again. But on the other hand, she was not the same as before. The dream was an exceptional experience which changed her consciousness. The other reality really exists. It was important to come back to the body and to come back to earth, and then to have the chance to express the witness that divine force is very real. When Eliade explores the phenomenology of the sacred, he uses the term homo religiosus. Such a person is able to experience depths and heights of transcendent reality. Modern man is non-religious, and that is a big challenge for modern society. Quote, modern non-religious man assumes a new existential situation. He regards himself solely as the subject and agent of history, and he refuses all appeal to transcendence. In other words, he accepts no model for humanity outside the human condition as it can be seen in the various historical situations. Man makes himself, and he only makes himself completely in proportion as he desacralizes himself in the world. The sacred is the prime obstacle to this freedom. He will become himself only when he is totally demysticized. He will not be truly free until has killed the last god. Unquote. Our experience of analytical cases shows that differentiation of religious from non-religious persons is relative and not categorical. Cases of long-term analysis show that people who do not describe themselves as religious, i.e., they do not practice religious rituals or traditions, still have dreams that show their deep interest in and connections to hidden reality. Images of transcendent experience emerge in the psyches of even so-called non-religious people. Perhaps the world of the homo religiosus will not experience a collective rebirth, but the images of transcendence and the models of behavior that follow as a consequence can still assist in postmodern persons' lives that are so full of challenges and stresses and help them to understand themselves better, quote unquote. Okay, here's the conclusion of this piece. Putting together the broken parts, which indicates the movement from separation toward conjunction and from fragmentation toward integration, is a complex process. The experience of what I've called the vertical axis is full of challenges. It may be the blessing, which opens new sources of vitality and meaning, inspiration, and creativity. It may bring moments when one feels as a person whose roots are above as well as below, is thus like a tree growing simultaneously towards and upwards. The goal is neither height nor depth, but the center. But it is not comfortable to feel like an inverted tree and to recognize that the deepest level of integration means facing disintegration as well. On the other hand, acceptance that human beings are rooted below and above widens the understanding of energy flow and broadens the integration process. One needs to experience the fertility of the soil of the land, history, and culture, the horizontal plane. On the other hand, one needs to experience moments of being rooted in emptiness, the vertical plane. For such experiences open new perspective on one's identity and ability to dialogue with the other, be it our beloved or an unknown wanderer. And so I think that this is terribly meaningful what she's talked about because I experience this in my own life regularly. For example, yesterday, Debbie and I went to a local swimming pool that we sometimes visit. And what we did there is we read. I read The Golden Road, and she read a book about Tibetan Buddhism. And, there was something about it that it made us feel grounded. For example, all the kids screaming and jumping in the pool and all that sound from our childhood is in a way a numinous sound. And we really loved it. We sat there for 2, 3 hours and got lost in the day before we came home. And so I, and I often feel the need to be grounded because my life right now is mostly in our apartment with my mother-in-law because we can't leave her for too long, and in my school or in this apartment, which is it's actually her apartment, which is nearby. And so we live kind of cloistered lives these days because I'm permanently disabled. I have 3 joint replacements, so I don't go running or sailing or any of the things I did in childhood. And my wife has got a bad knee now too, and so all 3 of us, my mother-in-law and my wife and I, all have canes and go around like 3 old geezers. But there's nothing wrong with our minds so far. Um, and so anyway, I part of what I find interesting is in the Golden Road is to see how in around the year 800, Charlemagne was, creating this empire in Europe, and yet his empire was pretty de minimis compared to the empires that were being set up in Asia at that time, with both Angkor Wat and Borobudur being worked on at the same time. They were finished at slightly different times, but within the same century. And now they're abandoned. And I remember the first time I ever heard of Angkor Wat was when I was in college, and I used to listen to the news about the Vietnam War every night because I pretty much knew I was going to Vietnam. And I didn't know in what capacity, but it was very clear that they were drafting young men my age. And and at that time, there was a CBS News reporter named George Sievertson who had found his way out to Angkor Wat, and he was giving a report about Angkor Wat, not really talking about the fact that it's the largest Hindu temple in the world. He didn't mention that, but he was talking about how the Khmer at the time were using artillery to try to destroy it. And the Cambodians have now restored it, it seems. But uh, the next day, I guess, Sievertson was killed with his whole crew, and we never saw him again after that. So it was quite a numinous moment in my life to uh, both be introduced to Angkor Wat, which it must have been about, oh, maybe 1966 or 7 when this happened. And and then to see what the Khmer Rouge, the horrors that they committed afterward, were really terrible. But anyway, um, that was that was over a temple that had not been used as a Hindu temple for, I don't know, hundreds of years, if not 1,000 years. Um, yeah, Archifanes says that Mary is elevated through union with the Father to nobility, where some might say, becomes a quadrinity. And yeah, this is you're sort of referring to the same thing as uh, the papal bull called the Ascension of Mary into Heaven, which was issued by Pope Pius XII in 1950. And Jung thought that that act by Pope Pius was the most important religious event since the Reformation. And anyway, uh, so Mary is an important uh, individual because she represents the feminine principle. And and anyway, one of the books that I've ordered is a book about Kali, and it interested me because it said that we need a fierce feminine now in this day and age. So we'll see. I may read that to this group. Yeah. So Richard says God has never been silent with Catholics. He's spoken through many saints throughout the millennia. And I would say that Jung recognized this, that the Catholics have built out um, a symbology and a ritual practice which causes people not to require the same needs, psychological needs, as the Protestants seem to have. And I think Jung said that he only had six Catholic clients in his whole career, and he had, well, he said he interpreted about 80,000 dreams during his life practice. So um, obviously, it's not a question of believing some wooey woo thing. It's a question of what does your psyche need, does every psyche need to heal itself? And um, the Catholic Church over two millennia has, developed a liturgy and a symbology which helps people do that. And yet um, it it was corrupted um, at the time of Martin Luther, and Martin Luther got angry because Catholic priests were selling indulgences and that sort of thing, and so there has been a corruption, or there was a corruption in the Catholic Church, and we've seen it recently in the last 40 years in the sexual proclivities of many priests who are supposed to be celibate. And obviously, that's hypocrisy of the first order. And the Catholics need to move away from that, I believe. But, there basically every religion has had its hell, its downfall. Um, and so it seems to me if the Catholic Church can recognize the depths and depravity of its sins, it can continue to be an important force in the world. And obviously, Pope Leo has started to make a further difference beyond what Pope Francis had done in his papacy. And so I have nothing but respect for what the Catholic Church has achieved, um, and to include what it achieved in the East, in the Eastern Church, in Constantinople, before Rome really was identified as the center of Catholicism. Of course, um, the Holy, not the Holy Roman Empire, but the center of the church was in what is today Istanbul, Constantinople, for centuries. And the Hagia Sophia, which is originally a Catholic cathedral, was built in the mid 6th century. So even before the beginning of the construction of Barabador and Angkor Wat, here's the Hagia Sophia being built, and when it was finished, it had the largest dome in the world, and that was the largest dome in the world for 1,000 years until St. Peter's was built. And so, um, it's to this day one of the major religious sites. Now, the politicians in Turkey have uh, been, over the years have not been kind to Hagia Sophia, and so they turned it into a mosque, and they did other things with it. And but I think they do recognize that it was built by Catholics, and not by Muslims, because Islam did not even exist in its current form before 640. But um, the Quran came from the numinous experience of the prophet, peace be upon him. But that numinous experience was happening in this same rough period, in this same period. And this period was 1,000 years after the Buddha, and it was um, 5,500 years after the origin of the Bhagavad Gita. So uh, we're Johnny come lately in terms of our religious approaches. And I've been a Protestant all my life because that was my upbringing. Um, but I recognize that there was a reason Jung didn't have many Catholic uh, patients over the years. Okay, so peace be upon him, Archiphanes, as we say. Okay, well, Deborah, I think you're probably right about the Presbyterians. Um, I was brought up for much of my life in the Presbyterian Church. I'm still confirmed in a Presbyterian church. And, we do say that we have a direct way of praying to God directly. We don't need intermediaries. Um, and we don't need all the accoutrements of the Catholic Church. But as I've learned about symbology and so on, I think that the Catholic Church is, in some ways more sensible to the needs of the unconscious, and that is kind of indicated by Jung's experience, and but it doesn't mean that you can't get there any which way but loose. I mean, my understanding is that there are now 5 Catholic denominations, including the Greek Orthodox, and the Russian Orthodox, and I don't know what the other divisions are. I know there's a lot of competition among the various sects of monks, including the Jesuits, for example, between the Jesuits and the Franciscans. Um, but we have to stop. We have to stop analyzing what's wrong with others' belief, and see what we can learn from them, and understand what we can learn from them. And that's my message, and always has been, that we can learn so much um, from just looking at how people worship around the world. And ultimately, we have to do that. We're not going to get to a world where we respect the divine and the undivine, let's say, the heaven and hell. We respect heaven and hell, which exist in our unconscious. And this has been known for a couple thousand years. But we've had a lot of people that preach against it, or they preach against the Catholics just because they're ornery. And, even my hard-headed Dutch ancestors used to beat back the Catholics who came up from Spain to convert them every year in the 80 Years' War. That's what the Treaty of Westphalia ended, was the 80 Years' War, and that was in 1648. That was only um, you know less than 400 years ago, and so relatively recently, that we ended this war between the Protestants and the Catholics, and we're still fighting it, and they're still fighting it in Ireland and other places, and we just have to stop it. Okay, what we have to understand is they all do the same thing. They all address the same human needs. We all have these needs, and we all have this healing power in our unconscious that needs to be unleashed. It needs to be um, freed from doctrine, I would say. It needs to be freed from doctrine where, um, anybody that says you've got to be an evangelical and um, be so holy and in this specific faith or you're going to go to hell. Sorry, I'm not there, not at all. And what we need is to, instead of looking away from each other, we need to look toward one another and say, what can we learn about accessing the unconscious and the numinous in the unconscious? Because as I was saying to Tim just yesterday, that for me, essentially all of my memories, all of my long-term memories are numinous moments. There are moments where, I don't know if at the time I felt that they were um, ordained by God, but because I was too young to know that at the time. But as I look back on them, I think that they were all numinous moments, the ones that I remember. Uh, and and those were the moments that made me see that there is a God. It's not the God of our youth. It's not an old man up in the sky watching us in every moment. It is within us. And and the sooner we all, as human beings in the whole world, recognize that, we will have better mental health. We will have fewer religious wars, and we will start to become the species that we have the potential to become. We need to do this. Um, so Deborah says, yes, we need to respect our commonality. It's always a power grab and a money grab for sure. It's very obvious when you visit the Vatican. It's a lot of black power there, dark power. Okay, uh, and and Kathy says, "Did you see how the humpbacks this, I think you're referring to a species of whale, are saving seals from the orcas. They're sick of the bullying by be a humpback. Yeah, amen. Uh, and it's obvious that whales have a consciousness and an intelligence too, as do elephants. Um, and Richard says the Eucharist is the key to alchemy of the spirit. Uh, and, if it works for you, Richard, that is wonderful. That is what I'm saying, that, there are ways to experience these things, but I have numerous moments every day, every day. And what they always tell me is is that, yes, there is a God, and yes, that God is contained here where the healing power is. Um, and I don't need anybody to tell me about it, that has a my way or the highway point of view. And so my only comment is that yes, I'm sure the Eucharist is the key to the alchemy of the spirit for you, but it doesn't have to be exactly that to succeed. Um, you know, I'm I'm just reading the commentary here. I'm not sure that I want to read it out into the feed here per se, other than to the extent it's here every week. Interesting. Cherie says that when the Nord Stream pipeline was blown up by the United States, the orcas were speaking to one another. I'll bet it must have been deafening for them. Um, and Kathy says, one of my visions is our extinction will follow closely on the heels of elephant extinction. That may well be. If we get that depraved that we kill, I believe it's 625,000 elephants in the world, we're doomed. And Art says, I think sometimes we put God in a box and don't see God in all things. Right on, Art. You hammered it right there. Thank you for that comment. Um, no. Okay. Well, God is very obviously in everything. And, um, I've had 3 experiences about wasps in the last 2 days. Um, one is that I heard that Prince William was playing polo, and one of his fellow polo players swallowed a wasp and died. And then I heard, like the next day, that someone was stung by a wasp here in my neighborhood, also died. And then I think it was on the same day, I was putting my hand on the banister of the steps going up to my apartment, and lo and behold, I missed a queen wasp by about 6 inches, and she would have gotten me for sure if I'd put my hand on her. And but I lucked out. She didn't. She didn't sting me. But I have had the experience because one time on a one of these latch doorknobs, I did put my finger on a yellow jacket, I think, and was stung, and my thumb swole all up. That happened when I was in the fourth grade, I believe. Um, so yeah, and Deborah says. I didn't mean to box Mary. In my opinion, I was saying she is all pervasive, absolutely. So, you know, we all have, Richard, we all have a ways to go. We all have been brought up in certain ways and taught our religion in certain ways. And the question is, how do we how do we open things, because we need to go back and look at one another and see what we can learn from one another. I acknowledge that the Quran was a divine inspiration by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Yes, it was. Um, and yet, whenever I have to say, peace be upon him, I feel that is, I'm being forced to say that, because if I don't say it, my Muslim friends will be offended. And I wouldn't mean to offend. And so therefore I do say it. Um, And yet we have to get beyond such strictures, because we have to get beyond, um, we have to get beyond, you know, um, hurtful words with one another all around the world. Um, Deborah said I had a hive of wasps and was worried what to do about them. When we went to move them, they had moved. Yep, they do that. Um, and so you're lucky. And what I would do is for sure get rid of that wasp nest so it's not there to be built up again next year. Um, Cherie says when one grows beyond the culture, one grows up in and one connects with all others. And I think that that's true, that as we start to understand these things in a kind of global basis, it doesn't mean that we're going to make everybody an American, for example, or a Britisher or what have you, or a Filipino. Doesn't mean we're going to make everybody equal in that sense. We still have a long way to go um, to achieve that kind of equality where we can erase borders. But at the same time, um, we can make a start to try to understand where people are coming from, and even destructive people, and people who we don't recognize as good. Um, there is something there um, that we have to see what they're struggling with. We don't understand their struggles. Um, and thank you for sharing your experience, Richard. I think that, you know, even Jung said that when you come in contact with a living God, you've been somewhere. It it really grabs you. Let's see, there are a couple footnotes here. So she has a footnote to an essay called Restoration of Continuity, Desperation or Hope in Facing the Consequences of Cultural Trauma. Um, and apparently there's a book, Confronting Cultural Trauma, Jungian Approaches to Understanding and Healing, um, which was by her and Murray Stein, published in 2014. Um, Probably be a good book to read. Um, and another essay of hers, Relationship with Authority and a Sense of Personal Strength. Yeah, we all have to develop that. So there's some interesting references to um, other books in this field, and especially how they relate to cultural trauma in Russia, which I think is quite a quite an issue. Um, even Mr. Putin has it because his cultural trauma was that he grew up in a time of the Soviet Union, and all of a sudden the Soviet Union came apart, and people like the Ukrainians and the Georgians and Moldovans and so on wanted to be independent, which was quite understandable. But I can see why it's traumatic to Putin, and he wants to try to turn it around by force, which that's never going to be achieved. Um, and even if there's a ceasefire and they say everything's going to be hunky dory, I'm sure that there's going to be trouble there for a long time. the same as there's going to be trouble for Israel for generations because of what has happened in Gaza. Um, and, there's no helping them for that, because they let it happen and they let their prime minister do that. He got away with it or is getting away with it. And, um, they're it's never gonna be forgotten. There's 2 million people that they're currently starving to death. Whether that is their intention or not is a distinction without a difference, it seems to me. But um, any that do survive are likely to take umbrage to the way they've been treated this 2 years. And I'm talking about the civilians, not the combatants. Yeah, Deborah says, I also think that Jung would have had a lot to say about the U.S. situation. I don't want to say his name. Yeah, amen. I wholly agree with that. Let me see. Okay, well, here's good news. Since this has been kind of a desultory conversation, I ran out of text, but and and so the next one in this book that we're reading, and we've been reading from for some time, Jung's Red Book for Our Time, Searching for Soul Under Postmodern Conditions, edited by Mary Stein and Thomas Arst. Next week we have Salome and the Emancipation of Women in the Red Book. Well, that is interesting. And of course, Jung was seen as sympathetic to the emancipation of women throughout his life. And and in most of the transmission or the early transmission of Jung's work has come through women who've seen to it that his work gets a wider audience, to include Mary Conover Mary Conover Mellon, the wife of Paul Mellon, uh, who must be a cousin of mine because all Conovers are cousins, and who persuaded Paul Mellon to both publish the first major version of the collected works of C.G. Jung. That's the 20-volume series that we have today, and also create the Philemon Foundation, which is now doing a considerable amount of publishing. And so we will be seeing things coming out of Philemon Foundation soon. And Art says, I've seen God work in my men's group for 25 years, and I can certainly uh, vouch for for the likelihood that that is true, Art, even though I don't know anything about your men's group. Um, Art has been one of uh, the probably the most faithful visitor to this YouTube channel over several years now, many years. And I certainly appreciate it. And I love seeing his contributions here. Um, Art has cerebral palsy and has difficulty speaking uh, but obviously not thinking. And and so I love to have Art's comments here. Um, and and Deborah says everyone in Israel and the occupied territory says PTSD, no doubt about it. Um, well, everybody, it's just a shame what's happened in Gaza. As most of you know, I have a young woman who I've been close to for a decade, over a decade now, who is Palestinian, who grew up in Gaza and fortunately no longer lives in Gaza. And fortunately, her entire family managed to get out of Gaza. And I'm very thankful for that fact. But and so I have certain sympathies um, with Gazans because I know that they're simply normal people trying to do normal things. Three of her sisters have become doctors, and her father was an operating room nurse in Gaza for his career. That was what he did. But he's now out of Gaza and he had retired anyway. So, and so, what will happen, I don't know. But uh, at the same time, I have friends like Henry Abramovich in Israel, who is a Jungian analyst and who we featured on this YouTube channel a few times. So there are, friends on both sides, and it's a shame that we let the knuckleheads control our lives. Jury is referring to um, the Romanov Royal Martyrs, which is a book about the martyrdom of the Russian aristocracy, the Tsar and his family around the time of the Russian Revolution, and I'm sure it must be amazing. I read a book called The Red Tsar, which is really about um, Stalin, And it really gives a pretty gruesome picture of life in the old Soviet Union and sort of the Russian attitude toward life in general. It's really, um, and then Shuri says Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution by Anthony Cyril Sutton, 1925 to 2002. Sutton taught economics at California State University, was a research fellow at Stanford's Hoover Institute from 1968. Um, and Israelis kicked Palestinian Christians from the Holy Sepulchre on Easter this year, 2025. Man's inhumanity to man. Boy, we have a lot of that going around right now. And
Yeah, I wanted to say something.
go ahead.
The thing that like that has made me like so like there are a lot of things about this situation that have made me like go off emotionally.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that's true for, you know, everyone involved, you know, and it affects everyone, you know,
Hmm.
on the other side of the world and our side of the world. You know, these events are affecting everyone. Um, and the thing that just like I just I ha that like I find incomprehensible and like I'm so repulsed by it and like but yet then at the same time it's like who am I to judge? You know, I'm not, you know, I'm an INFJ. So of course I'm like the judge, but
Hmm.
I am aware enough to know that like that's just me. But the politicians just blatantly saying things that are untrue, like we can see that that is untrue. And like
Yeah,
the silence, the conspiracies to keep it going, it's maddening. And like it makes
assuredly.
me so emotional. Like I try to like get at it like from all angles, and then in the end I just end up so emotional.
Well, we have the power. We, the people, can change things. And, I think that many of the people who voted as they did in 2024 were misinformed by conspiracy theories and all kinds of stuff. But um, now that they see the consequences of it, I hope that we can get past it. That's the question. They're certainly trying
Yeah.
to, the people in power are certainly trying to rig the system so that they stay in power forever. And, whatever our president accuses the left of doing are normally what I see is whatever he accuses the left of doing, he's actually doing on the right. and and but he wants to try to hive off his own guilt. That's what I see.
I mean, it's completely interesting on like a lot of levels.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it's so confusing to me.
yeah,
But you know, like humans, we just need to talk to each other, like what you
yeah,
said, like just to keep talking to each other, and we can clash, but eventually, you know, not hold it against the other person. Eventually, when things
yeah.
simmer down.
I mean, what is clear to me after lots of historical reading around my Jungian reading is that, these things always pass. Okay. I mean, um, there's this book called Crowds and Power, and I forget the author's name right now. He's a Nobel Prize laureate, but um, he really nailed it with Crowds and Power, and basically one of the stories he gave is how this one awful emperor of India had destroyed all his people, and he ultimately, died, but his all of his close supporters had been destroyed by him. And, and so ultimately Delhi was left in rubble. And you know, we see a lot of that in that part of the world where old civilizations have become overgrown. Um, it's very telling in Goa, where at one point there were 16 churches in a very small area of Goa, 16 of them. And one of them is now the Cathedral of Goa. There's still two Christian churches that were founded by Jesuits, um, still in existence, but 14 of them are just overgrown. They no longer have roofs, and it looks like Planet of the Apes there. But then um, as I'm reading The Golden Road, I'm hearing that about Hindu temples and Buddhist temples all over Southeast Asia that are all overgrown too. And so, these uh, as as Gandhi had it, there have been tyrants, and for a time they can seem very strong, but in the end they always fall. Think of it, always. And so I hope we're getting our snootful of it now, so that we can get away from it for a while longer.
Yeah, but as humans, we just need to keep talking to each other, I think, and probably not through social media.
Well, maybe it will be. Maybe social media in the end will be our saving grace, because if we are communicating with uh, one another, it may, in the end, it may help. I think it may. But, you know, along the way, there are going to be people who misuse these things. And we have to be smart enough to figure it out and know when people are gaslighting us and when they're telling us the truth. I mean, this just yesterday, for example, our president announces that he's moved two nuclear submarines nearer to Russia. Yeah, really? I mean, we've had submarines near Russia for the last 50 years, 60 years, more than that, 70 years since the Nautilus, the nuclear submarines have been surrounding Russia. And so what's he doing announcing troop movements? That's a violation of
Hmm.
security if ever I did hear one. And of course, he didn't say where they had been and where they were going. And, the truth is, I don't think once a boomer goes out, I don't think even the Pentagon knows where it is. I mean, they might know that it's in the Pacific Ocean or something like that. But I think the captain has discretion to go wherever he wants, to
Well,
go where.
apparently there is a Russian sub off the coast of Florida somewhere here, and there are a lot of drones. Um, because I'm not that far. I'm like actually really not that far from um that whole Mar-a-Lago place. But I was here first. I came here
What,
when I was 14.
yeah,
So
and so what? What
so I
about,
was here a long time ago.
yeah, but what was the point about the Russian submarines? I mean, what was the connection? I'm sorry, I was
Oh,
reading
because you
something.
talked about the U.S. submarines, and then it's
Yeah,
like, okay, then they send one over here. It's just like tit for tat, and
yeah. I mean, it's been a silent war, the Cold War, but it has continued. Um, the problem Russia has is they ran out of money, and they're continually running out of money. And the reality is the size of the economy, nothing else, not manpower. I mean, the Russian economy is the size of Italy's economy. The whole
hmm.
economy of Russia is equal to Italy's economy. Okay, um, and some way said, well, Russia's like a nuclear armed gas station. Because they have a lot of natural gas and oil under the tundra of Siberia, I guess. So they have a lot of natural resources, um, and so they're a gas station, place where we can get energy, I guess, and they're nuclear armed, but that's about it. And so anyway,
Yeah, but I just hope as humans we can, you know, it's a lot. It's not like one person, even though there's one person a lot of people, or two people a lot of people point to, or three, but it's more than that. It's,
well,
you
the
know,
point is that look, for thousands of years, we haven't even known about one another, right? And even um, we had to surmise things. For example, um, the the Iroquois nation. Daniel Borston, who was the Librarian of Congress, wrote a book called The Discoverers, and in there he recounts this story about an American diplomat who wanted to discover what the origin of the Iroquois nation was. Okay, the Iroquois nation, which consists of six tribes: the Mohawk, the Onondaga, and so on, and the Oneida. The Oneida are from my area, and the he wanted this diplomat. This was in 1840, I believe. He wanted to discover where they may have migrated from, because by the time he was doing this research, they had figured out that human beings had not even been in the Americas at all before 11,000 years BC. And now I think they may have revised that to say 35,000 years BC. But still, there were not human beings or our ancestors in North and South America before whatever date, 11,000 BC. I'm going to use that date. And so at that time, up until that time, there was a land bridge across the Bering Sea. And so all these, what we now call Native American tribes, came from Asia. They did. And so if you go to Brownsville, Texas, you see lots of people that look like Japanese there, for example. Okay,
My
so
dad is from Brownsville.
oh, is that right?
hmm
Okay,
And apparently, like, no one, like, the people that are born there, like, they never leave. Never.
yeah.
And the only reason my dad ever left was because he got drafted
Hmm.
and then he met my mom,
Hmm.
and she doesn't want to live in Texas. But
And where,
that's the only reason he ever left.
and so where did they live now?
Oh, we live in South Florida.
Oh, okay. Um, so so anyway, this dip who was working on, and that's just an amusing way of referring to a diplomat. Okay, this dip wanted to figure out where the Iroquois nation came from, and so he did a very careful organization structure of the Iroquois nation. And he sent it to 200 diplomatic stations around the world, to consulates everywhere, and said, has anybody seen a tribe with this organizational structure? And the only one that matched, because it's matrilineal, was the Tamil of Sri Lanka. Okay, the Tamil tribes. And what I'm finding out now, though, because of this recent scholarship by Dalrymple, that it's probably, um, the Sri Lankans probably came from Tamil Nadu in India. Okay, the South Indian tribe, the Tamils, and of course Sri Lankans, uh, who at that time it was called Ceylon, were Tamil tribe. And so they that was the origin of that tribe, that some of them moved across the Bering Land Bridge and ultimately ended up in what is today upstate New York. That's where the Iroquois live. And 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 so, obviously we didn't know that until relatively recently, and it wasn't even widely known until Borston's book, The Discoverers, which was published maybe 30 years ago or so. Um, and So now I know it, but I don't know how many people have read the book. I think it was a popular book at the time, but who pays attention and thinks about these things? And the point is that, these tribes largely had their origins in what is today India. So this is why Columbus was confused, why he thought he had landed on the eastern coast of India when he got to the Americas.
Yes. Someone asked me the other day, like, why is the tip of Africa called the Cape of Good Hope? Like they were being snarky and was like, there's nothing good about it. And was like, oh, that was from when the Europeans were, first becoming maritime a civilization, and they figured out that they could go around it to
Hmm.
India, and that's why
Hmm.
it's called the Cape of Good Hope, because
Okay.
they wanted to get to India.
Yeah. Well, obviously they did. And and the fact is that India had been gotten to, um, thousands of years before that. I mean, the first Europeans in the Cape Town colony were Dutch, and they created a lumber station or something like that, a feeding station for the ships that were going around the Cape of Good Hope. But that was in around 1600, and it's well researched in uh, James Michener's book, The Covenant. And so they weren't necessarily those Dutch ancestors weren't necessarily good people because they kept that colony very small, and uh, they did terrible things to people at that time, which you can learn from Michener's book. Um, and I'm talking about their own people besides the Africans that were around them. But anyway, the point is, according to the Golden Road, India and Southeast Asia were being were being reached by uh, ship and all kinds of things back before the time of Christ. It's very clear that that's the case now, archaeologically. So I wonder how Worston would rewrite his book today. I'm not sure, but in any case, it's very clear that there was a very robust trade between India and Rome, for example, long before the time of Christ. And so it's very reasonable to believe that Christ did, during the 18 years we don't know about, from age 12 to age 30, did at that time go to India. And it's very logical to think he might have done that. Um,
It's amazing that like they were able to talk to each other, get along with each other fairly, fairly well, I guess,
well,
but
they
to
liked
communicate with each other.
they liked one another's goods. The Romans liked the gold that was coming out of Southeast Asia and India, and all kinds of things, diamonds and the Deccan Plateau, which is around Hyderabad in the center of India, was the source uh, of the largest diamond ever discovered in the world, which was just found in a stream by some
Wow.
is Indian peasant, but the largest diamond ever discovered in the world is in the Tower of London. in the in the um, what do you call it? The
British Museum?
Yeah, not the British Museum, but the British treasures, whatever. It was part of the crown jewels. That's what it is, the crown jewels. And and it's still the largest diamond in the world, even though it was cut by one of the British monarchs so that they could use it in the crown, in the actual crown of Queen and King,
Wow.
the king now. But it's part of the crown jewels. And it's amazing what you learn, right? I mean, here in Annapolis, we have communion chalices that came from the Church of England and were loaned from the crown jewels, um, to this church, St. Mary's Church, uh, which is the Episcopal Church in Annapolis. It's an old church that was founded there at the time the city was founded, which was 1649. And so, um, they still have records of that loan of these silver chalices and stuff that were donated, or not donated, but on loan from the British Crown, and they're still carried on the books of the church on loan from the British Crown. But since the Revolution, nobody's thought about giving them back.
Yeah, don't remind them.
Yeah. Uh, but anyway, the church still has them, and because they're priceless in value, they've never been able to insure them, and so they. I mean, this is an apocryphal story. I don't know this directly, but my understanding is they had to install a vault in the sanctuary of the church so that they can um, use these chalices every week. They do
Ooh, that
still
makes it
use
even
them.
cooler to
Yeah.
like go down in the basement and I don't know, just I think that sounds really cool.
Right. But nonetheless, these communion chalices on loan from the British Crown, and they're still using them today. But they were on loan since before the Revolution. Um,
Sort of how China does with the pandas.
yeah. Well, Cherie says the British royal family should. It's the Kohinoor diamond is the name of the diamond. I couldn't think of the name before, but it's the Kohinoor diamond, and we know its source because we know when it was found and who found it and so on. And um, it was grabbed by some British cavalry officer and brought back to the Queen. And Cherie says the British royal family should give all those jewels back to the countries they were stolen from. Absolutely. And at one time, I had designed a skyscraper to be built in Hyderabad, and what I was thinking. And we were calling this skyscraper the Bhavana Diamond, Bhavana being the name of my partner's first daughter. And and it never happened because we were working on it at the time of the 2008 crash. But one of my thoughts had been that we would at least ask the British Crown to loan the Kohinoor diamond to Hyderabad as a way to attract tourism to Hyderabad, uh, because Hyderabad is not a well-known city outside of India. I mean, by non-Indians. I mean, do you even know of Hyderabad, or would you know of Ahmedabad, let's say?
Well, I'm really into this community called Saj Marsh. The newest guy that's in charge of the lineage is kind of whatever, but the ones that came before him were so good.
Mhm.
Um and um I'm just really into Hinduism. Um
Oh, you are okay.
yeah, I am.
Okay.
And I
You,
used to
you.
teach yoga to
Mhm.
other veterans with PTSD
Uh-huh.
and I was really dedicated until I found out that the organization, like the head board, they were like making $80,000 a year. And like I did it voluntarily.
Hmm.
So I was like,
Yeah,
but
that's a bummer when you find out the bosses are making so much money. Um, because the same is true for us as school teachers. I mean, I'm getting fairly decently paid, I guess, um, by teacher standards because they pay me for my doctorate. Um, but I know our our administrators are earning in at least the mid six figures, if not more. Maybe in I think our principal may make as much as 225,000 a year or something like that. That's a lot of money. Um,
Yeah, for regular people.
yeah, for
A lot.
regular people, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So anyway, here's a question for you from Deborah. Have you been to India?
No, I haven't been to India.
Okay.
No. I
Uh,
want to.
and Sheree mentioned also the Elgin marbles. Uh, and Art finally said the museums ought to return historical relics back to the countries they've been taken from. If they've made replicas, this should be no issue. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that absolutely. I mean, I know the Philadelphia Museum, the museum that you know of from Rocky, uh, has in it, the some sort of Egyptian entry gate or something like that that was actually dismantled and brought from Egypt to America in the 19th century, and there are many examples of that. But I mean, some countries did get smart. So, for example, when Heinrich Schliemann and his wife were doing their archaeology on Troy and Mycenae, they found lots of gold masks and all sorts of things. And the Greeks and the Turks apparently only let them have half of it, half what they found. And so there are a lot of these gold things in the museum in Athens, I believe. And I don't know where I guess in Topkapi Palace, maybe they're kept in Turkey. Um, so they're there, but Schliemann was German, and so he gave the other half to the Berlin Museum. This was before the time of Hitler, and so a lot of them got melted down for the Germans, and disappeared out into the ether. They're somewhere. We don't know. We know not where. They'll turn up one of these days. Um, let's see. So Cherie says, in oneself lies the whole world, and if you know how to look and learn, then the door is there, and the key is in your hand. Nobody on earth gave you either that key or the door to open it. Well, I agree with that, Cherie. And this is one of the teachings that came through Jung, which is that we have within us um, everything that we need, and if we go back to the beginning of the Red Book here now to the first chapter of the Red Book and the way of what is to come. um, Jung says it explicitly at the end of the Supreme Meaning. Um, he says on page 120 of the Red Book Reader's Edition, he says, the supreme meaning is great and small. It is as wide as the space of the starry heaven. and as narrow as the cell of the living body. And, you know, absolutely. I mean, even science would agree with that because, you know, science tells us that our sun was founded only on hydrogen, and then it turned into helium, um, and so those were the first elements that have created us and everything else. And so we know those things. I'm sure he says Krishnamurti, J. Krishnamurti. We know Alan Watts met Carl Jung. Did Krishnamurti ever meet Carl Jung? He might well have. I don't really know where their paths might have crossed, but they were certainly contemporaries. So he might well have met Jung. And Robert Sheldrake, a biologist, and met Krishnamurti, and he spent many years in India and speaks with Ian McGilchrist. Sure, okay. We have no monopoly on wisdom in this YouTube channel. We just go for it. We've been through so many species and lost so many antiquities. All we can do is try to be ethical in our own lives and do our best with that. Yeah. And, I'm trying to create a few creative items that will be meaningful to my grandchildren and maybe stay in my family for a while. And one of the lessons of the Golden Road is that most of the history that we have of ancient times comes to us through carvings and inscriptions that were carved by human beings over the last 6, 7, 8,000 years, and not even from books, because books only have existed for 500 years, maybe. And before that, things were on scrolls. So, uh, that's one of the reasons I'm interested in the work of Tim Holmes, because he's a sculpture in bronze, and bronze, as we know from the things that Dalrymple talks about in the Golden Road, there we have statuary and inscriptions, steels as they're called, um, that are in bronze, and therefore we still have them today. And they're only just so many years ago. And Cherie asks, how is Jordan doing? I think of him often. And my answer is, I don't know, because he sort of just left. He took a umbrage to something I said haphazardly at some point during our conversations, and um, apparently he's a little bit more right-leaning than I am, which isn't hard because I'm pretty far left. um, but it's a good question, and I should ask, and I will ask. So let's see what I find out. Anyway, all right, peace, everyone. I'm going to move out. Michelle, did you have anything else you wanted to say? Uh, I see you're still here, so if
Oh,
you
no, I'm good.
you're good. Okay. All right. Well, peace. We're gonna get into this new piece next week, and it's I'll just read the name of it again, just for remind everybody. On Salome and the Emancipation of Woman in the Red Book by George Rosh. And there's a quote that begins it, which is from a poem by T.S. Eliot, for the roses had the look of flowers that are looked at. Anyway, a lot of stuff for feminism coming along, so we'll see what else we can talk about. So peace, everybody.